Well, I have a very specific view of reparations, and it's a view that we outlined, Kirsten Mullen and I, in our book, From Here to Equality. We think that reparations must have four components. The first is it must establish who's eligible to receive reparations. And in our argument, we propose that it should be Black Americans who have ancestors who were enslaved in the United States. Secondly, the legislation that eventually gets developed should ensure that reparations plays the role of eliminating the racial wealth gap in the United States. The racial wealth gap is the primary and most powerful indicator of the cumulative effects across generations of white supremacy in this country. It would require an expenditure in the vicinity of 11 to 12 trillion dollars to eliminate that gap. And once we focus on that objective, it becomes clear that many of these other tactics, proposals, plans that people are putting forward to be called reparations really don't function as reparations. The third attribute that a reparations plan ought to have is it should involve direct payments to the eligible recipients. And then fourth and finally, it needs to be a project that's conducted by the federal government for two reasons. First, the federal government is the only level of government that has the capacity to meet the bill. If we took the combined budgets of all the state and local governments in the United States, including Evanston, Illinois, that would come to $3.1 trillion. But the amount that's required to eliminate the racial wealth gap is in excess of $11 trillion. So states and localities can't do it. The federal government can, and we are aware that the federal government can do it, in part because of our recent experience with the funds that were amassed to address the coronavirus crisis very quickly without raising taxes. But the other point that I'd like to make is that the federal government is the culpable party. It's the federal government that bears the legal and authority responsibility for the series of atrocities that Black Americans have been subjected to from the period of slavery into the present moment, where we have mass incarceration, police killings of Blacks who are unarmed, as well as ongoing discrimination in a variety of areas.
So for you, even if the states had the capacity to produce 11 or 12 trillion dollars to meet reparations, there's another philosophical and moral issue at stake here. You would not support state-based reparations even if the funds were available. Is that accurate?
I would not be so inclined to do so, in large measure, because what would happen is I think that states would adopt very different programs. You were talking about the issue concerning states' restoration of control over the abortion rights. And that would eliminate kind of a unified project for reparations. So I think it's important, regardless of whether or not the states had the capacity to do it, that we do this as a federal project. This is a national responsibility.
A national responsibility. What form should this responsibility take? There are many debates, not just about whether or not reparations should be given, but what form they should take. Are we talking about a stimulus plan type of check sent out to the descendants of formerly enslaved Africans? Are we talking about free public education? What could reparations look like?
So let me say at the outset that indirect measures like scholarships for education are not going to turn the trick in terms of eliminating the racial wealth gap. It's noteworthy that the median Black household head with a college degree has 2/3 of the net worth of the median white household head who never finished high school. So equalizing education or improving educational standards in the Black community is not going to turn the trick in terms of addressing the racial wealth gap. And that's what must be the target of a reparations program. And as I mentioned a moment ago, it should be conducted in such a way that direct payments are made to eligible recipients, just in the same way that direct payments were made to eligible recipients under other reparations plans. Whether it was the German government's payments to victims of the Holocaust, or it's the United States government's own payments to Japanese Americans who were unjustly incarcerated during the course of World War II. there's no reason it should be any different for Black American descendants of U.S. slavery.